He almost stopped reading at the title. Crime and punishment. Not crime and consequence. Not crime and error. Punishment. It was an accusation disguised as a promise. He read in his narrow room, the air stale, the light low, where ideas usually arrived sharp and exhilarating, like proof snapping cleanly into place. This was where he had first learned to think of people as numbers, variables, necessary losses, where murder could appear not as an act, but as a solution. At first, the book annoyed him. The poverty was excessive, the fever melodramatic. The man at the center, this other Raskolnikov, cursed with his name, was clearly inferior, undisciplined, too emotional. A mind like his should not have hesitated, should not have panicked, should not have been so sloppy. He read the murder scene with professional interest. Why linger? Why improvise? Why let fear interrupt clarity? He caught himself rewriting it in his head. Cleaner, faster, no mistakes, no witnesses, the theory intact. But the book refused to stop where it should have. The murder did not resolve anything. It did not harden the man or elevate him. It did not even make him dangerous. It made him stupid. That was the first crack. The character's thoughts, once precise, began to decay. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly. He forgot things, repeated himself, misread faces. His ideas no longer assembled, they slipped. Pride did not expand, it narrowed. He became obsessed with himself, then lost even that. Raskolnikov paused his reading. This was wrong. Extraordinary men did not collapse like this. This was Dostoevsky cheating, smuggling morality into psychology, stacking the deck so the reader would mistake weakness for justice. And yet, he kept turning pages, because the deterioration was familiar. The book described something he had never articulated but had occasionally felt. The way a single act could poison thought itself. How the mind, once it crossed a certain line, no longer worked in good faith. How intelligence could turn inward and begin devouring its owner. This was not punishment imposed from outside. This was punishment as revelation. The police were irrelevant. The law was almost a joke. The real betrayal came from the mind itself, from the sudden inability to believe in one's own abstractions. The theory still existed, but it no longer obeyed him. He closed the book again, harder this time. This was fiction, he insisted. A cautionary tale for lesser men. A novel designed to frighten cowards into obedience. Real extraordinary men, men like Napoleon, did not rot from the inside after necessary acts. But the thought returned, uninvited. What if greatness is not tested by the act, but by what the act leaves behind? Then Sonia appeared. He despised her immediately. Not because she was naive or religious or weak, but because she could not be argued with. She offered no counter-theory, no competing abstraction. She did not justify suffering or rationalize evil or balance outcomes. She simply lived inside suffering without pretending it meant something else. Raskolnikov searched for her flaw. Surely this was sentimentality. Surely this was Dostoevsky manipulating pity. But the pages refused to cooperate. Her presence dismantled the entire structure his thinking depended on. Because if suffering could not be converted into a calculation, then murder could not be converted into a solution. Her compassion was humiliating, not because it was kind, but because it exposed the lie beneath his system, that he had mistaken emotional detachment for strength, that he had confused the ability to abstract with the right to do so. By the final pages, the book no longer felt like a story. It felt like surveillance. Every rationalization he had rehearsed in secret appeared here, already exhausted. Every fantasy of clarity after the act dissolved into something smaller, uglier. Fragmentation, division, the slow, irreversible splitting of the self. The murder he had imagined, necessary, clean, almost virtuous, now looked heavy. Not with guilt, but with consequence. Consequence not as punishment, but as loss of coherence. The permanent distortion of thought, the inability to return. Would he have killed after reading the book? Perhaps not. Not because he had been frightened into morality. Not because he had accepted repentance or redemption. But because the book had stolen something essential from the fantasy. It had made the crime legible. And once legible, it could no longer promise what he wanted it to promise. No clarity, no elevation, no proof of greatness, only dissolution. And yet, this is where the story refuses comfort. The pride did not disappear. The hunger to test himself did not die. It recoiled, injured, but intact. Reading Crime and Punishment did not save Raskolnikov. It cornered him. It showed him that the most dangerous part of the crime was not the risk of being caught, but the certainty of being changed in ways no theory could control. The murder did not happen. Not that day. Not in that room. But neither did peace. Raskolnikov sat in silence, aware that the book had done something worse than condemn him. It had made it impossible to commit the crime innocently, and impossible to imagine himself surviving it whole.